Welcome back to the Wolf of Queen Street podcast series. But today, straight into the show, Lani Fogelberg, leading business consultant, keynote speaker, just recently relaunched your podcast On the Track with Lani Fogelberg, and also helps people unlock their potential with ambitious companies to kick ass in their niche, across their market, everything they're trying to achieve. And Lani, I've always seen you from within the LinkedIn space or in the Instagram space. You've got this amazing business, the consultancy side, but you've also got this other edgy side of you that you write some very beautiful and enticing cars out there that we might talk about later. But Lani, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be here.
That's awesome. So one thing I wanted to get into at the moment is obviously you, top-end business consultant. You've got Fogelberg Consulting that you've done in the last couple of years. I just want to go a little bit back through sort of your journey and your story to how that came about, because Fogelberg Consulting's only, I think, 2019 it actually kicked off. So this part of you now is actually quite recent compared to, your whole history.
Yeah, it is. And it's one of the questions I get asked most frequently is, where did you start? How did you get into consulting? And I'm not the best person to ask in terms of making the leap from your job into consulting, because I had some very unique kind of circumstances around that, which I'm happy to go into. But basically, I mean, the best place to start is winding back to school. I was a nerd at school. I was always the top of the class. And I don't say that to be arrogant or bullshit. It's just the way that it was. I loved school. And when we got to seventh form, as we called it back then, if anyone was going to go to university, it should have been me. And I didn't. I got in, but I couldn't decide what I wanted to do. And I ultimately went out into the workforce and started working as a receptionist. And people are often really surprised to hear that, because they can't join the dots between receptionist, management and strategy consultant. But because of the way that my brain was wired, I thought that maybe when I was older, I would be an accountant if you'd asked me when I was 13 or 14. So in that reception role, I really just focused on putting in a lot of effort and showing that I was prepared to provide extra value over and above what I was doing. And ultimately, I ended up working in a finance role in a car dealership. So that was my first foray into finance. And that's when I was like 20 or 21. So quite a long time ago. And in 2012, I literally got a phone call out of the blue from this man in Australia who had gotten my contact details from another Kiwi that I'd worked with for a really short period of time. And he wanted to set business up in New Zealand. He went to this Kiwi that worked for him and said, "Hey, who can I talk to?" We talked, and then a few months later, I started working for him and set up a couple of businesses in New Zealand for this Australian group. One of those was in commercial finance, which I set up in 2013 and then ran until 2019. So that's how Fogelberg Consulting was born, basically. We built that business. It was a great time. And then when I decided to leave, people asked me to do some consulting. So here I am. It's that simple. There's no secret about it.
But there's also something, you've spoken about before in previous shows, looking in hindsight of, you said you were a bit of the, let's say, the nerd in school, you were the smart kid in doing that. But there was also a bit of a realization that you're also a problem solver. You love to solve problems, right? And look for the situations. And that was something you can go, hey, I can't pinpoint how I got into consulting, but I do know, give me a challenge, and that is what I crave.
Honestly, sometimes the way I explain what I do now is I just do adult-sized jigsaw puzzles for a living. And at my intermediate school, there was an extension class, an extracurricular thing called problem solving, which I did and loved. I look forward to it every week or month, however often it was. So I'm a problem solver as well.
And then coming back to, you said, Fogelberg Consulting 2019, a big thing for you, there was a bit of a life realization when you're in your day job. So this is, I think, also a big thing we see in our day-to-day lives, right? We get into a place where we might not have thought we'd get into. We do that for a couple of years, 5 years, 8 years, 10 years down the line. And unfortunately, some of us stay in that hamster wheel, and then some of us have a bit of a realization or a moment. I got the curveball from in 2019 was my year as well. My brain tumor was 2019, so that was my curveball to push me in the direction. But I know you also had a not as drastic a moment, but you had a moment around your brother and stuff that realizing that, hold on, this hamster wheel here is not where I should continue going along.
Yeah, my brother, he's 5.5 years older than me. So he's about to turn 40. And when he was 35, he entered the police force.
Amazing.
So he was at police college. And in May 2019, I went down to Wellington-ish for his graduation. And my mum was there, my dad was there, my brother was there, my nephew was there. And the number of times I was looking at my phone, emailing, taking calls, putting out bushfires. And like, this was a really momentous and special occasion for us as a family. Like my brother going into the police force, like
he would have been one of the oldest rookies as well.
There was a few. Like I would say, very, very broad age range actually was one of the observations I had that day. And, you know, I'm sitting there dealing with this shit, quite frankly, which, it's important. It's business. We've got to make things happen. I get that. But like, this is a day with my family that I'll never get back. And I think it was the next day or the day after that, I was like, I'm out. Yeah. I'm done.
It's just not what you need, right?
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Now, obviously, look here, you know, a lot of us go through that through our lives. We have those moments and it comes up to us and we do that whole realization of, fuck, I'm stuck, can't get out of it. Some of us are lucky enough that we can totally pivot and change. Some of us, unfortunately, can't just pack up and go, cool, I'm going to leave my day job, find and follow my passion piece because I still got bills to pay and everything else and the rest. What's your thoughts about, I mean, a lot of people is obviously through Fogelberg Consulting and Senior Story, a lot of people gone, you know, Lani, tell me how I can step away. Yeah. You know, what's your thoughts around that or guide points around, let's say young people, struggling people that find themselves down a path, but actually want to pivot?
Yeah. And there are 2 points I'll always address around this kind of question. And one is acknowledging the position that I was in the middle of 2019 where I could just say, you know what, fuck it, I'm out. And the amount of financial security that's required to be able to do that. I had no plans on working for the foreseeable future at that point. And that's not a position that many 30-year-olds are actually in to make. And so I'm always very, very careful to acknowledge that and say that I know that not everyone is in this position. But secondly, I was in a great position at that age, but keeping in mind that I'm 34 now. So when I was 23, 24, 25, 26, we were online. We were doing things online, but there weren't nearly as many opportunities to create additional incomes for yourself as what there is to someone of that age now in 2023. So my one piece of advice around that is seek ways that you can increase the money that's coming into your bank account. Because if that's the thing that's stopping you from, I don't want to say pursuing your passion, because I really feel like that's kind of an overused phrase. But if that is what's stopping you from feeling happy and fulfilled, then that's probably the thing to address so that you feel equipped to put yourself in a position where you're going to feel happier and more fulfilled.
Totally. Yeah. You know, you're saying pursuing your passion. Yeah, it's true that it's a piece out there and going, it's more what, drives us and what we're passionate, and what inspires us really is sort of the thing to go into. And it is true, and I think it's sometimes, I can imagine with yourself being asked this quite often. It's like, how do I make myself relatable to everyone else and going, wow, due to my situation, I'm in the 1%, so I can't be relatable. But it's still good for what you said there of going, understanding where you are, understanding what your situation is. And I think the biggest thing, like when I speak to a few people and go that, are saying they're stuck, is saying that you can get to where you want to go, but it might just take a little bit longer than a one-step jump, right? It might take 6 months or 9 months to transition, right, in that path, finding the revenue or the cash flow. Or sometimes it's not about money, it's about situation, it's about time, it's about location, and looking at the guide points around that to move forward. Yeah.
I mean, I didn't have any children when I was 30. Yeah. A lot of people have families and other significant responsibilities, or they're caring for a parent, and so I had a level of independence at that age as well, which meant that I sort of didn't have any nooses around my neck.
So a big thing, you 2019, you launched Fogelberg Consulting. I think you do a handful of clients a year, going building up for the best of that. And, you've achieved, great level of success in your fields over the last 10 years, whether it's for, the business side or the beautiful cars you drive and all the rest of it. But I know there's a big thing for yourself, and I'd like to get into this, is talk about, firstly, about the mental health side of things within where you see it in the workforce from your side of it, your opinion, and then also how you see it across New Zealand as well.
Yeah, honestly, it saddens me.
Mm-hmm.
It saddens me the state that New Zealand has gotten to,
mm-hmm.
and what the statistics show about where we are in the world. Is it 18 to 24-year-old males, I think, and also there's another higher age bracket, which I think is around the 40 mark, where we have the highest suicide rate, for example, in young men. And at the same time, there's this external perception of New Zealand that it's this great, clean, green, chill, relaxed, down to earth place. So why are we getting this result in terms of the mental state of some of our people? And, let alone speaking about women, it's just men. Yeah. And where do I even start?
Yeah.
It's such it bugs me a lot. And especially from, I can tell there are going to be some things we talk about that get me a little bit wound up and fired up.
Please do.
Especially when I get my jacket off soon. Especially from where I stand in a consulting capacity and what I've observed over the last few years, right? And I'm 34 years old, so I feel like I'm almost at the age, maybe if I was closer to 40, but I feel like I'm at the age where I can relate to the generations who are millennial and older, but also young enough to relate to Gen Z and the younger millennials. So I can see both perspectives, but I can also see where perspectives are destructive when it comes to mental health, and well-being in the workplace is one that I encounter a lot. And there not being systems and structures to support younger people to flourish and to succeed in their roles. There is kind of this anti-young generation sentiment that I observe a lot in people, even who are my age, are in their 40s, in the generations above millennial. And man, people spend a lot of time at work. So if they're being made to feel shit about themselves, or they've got unique needs that aren't able to be accommodated in a workplace, whether it's neurodiversity, whether it's a physical condition like I live with an incurable disease, or personal circumstances. If these are not able to be catered for in a workplace, and if that can't be acknowledged by people that are in a management or a senior leadership level, they can't expect to get good results at a commercial level if they're not fostering a culture of sort of self-awareness within themselves about what's happening within the organization, and foster a positive culture that is focused on the well-being of people. The fact is, we are in 2023. We can't do what we did in 2003.
Yeah. Yeah. It is such an interesting one. I just got back from South Africa. I did a couple of weeks over there, and friends, and sitting down. Some of these friends I hadn't seen in 20 years. Some of them I hadn't seen since we were in high school together. And we're sitting down, and we're going through, how's your life, and how's our life, and how's South Africa, and how's New Zealand. And we have this full comparison. And then we got into an afternoon session with a couple of guys sitting there, and they're, a couple of beers into it, and in this sort of realization of like, I had to explain to these guys growing up in South Africa, where you live around poverty and violence and all the worst things in the world, going, we live on the other side of the coin. We've got all this beauty, but we've got this epidemic per se around mental health and suicide. And for me, and I'm on camera all the time and I talk, and like stuff, I couldn't sit there and explain to them why. Effectively, right? And I think that's also the biggest, one of the challenges is of how do we explain it first effectively, because then we can understand what is going on. And they're like, but that is unheard of. And I know I've spoken on a couple of shows previously. America's got their gun violence, New Zealand's got our mental health and suicide. That's, I think, that unfortunately we can't explain in the world. And And I think we slowly get into a place now where we're pushing that can be spoken about more freely, especially in the males, and that side. But also, I'm gonna throw something out there. I'm also fucking pissed off with people that are not getting on it because it's trendy.
Yeah.
So now I'm getting real cranky, and I've been talking to a few people, online about now people are coming up and going, "Oh, I'm an advocate, and I push this and I push that because it's trendy and they look good and they get a tick box." And it's like, well, fuck you.
Yeah.
To your face,
yeah.
And don't ever come around in my circles, because I've gone through mental health. I've gone through the darkest dark where I had suicide in front of me, and I was able to make the right decision at that point. So this is where I have these challenges of we need to allow safe spaces where we can talk openly, but we also need to be able to boot these other idiots out of the way that is jumping on something that they can get a tick box from it.
Yeah. And I think resilience and anxiety plays a huge part in this. I spoke at an event last year, and the topic of my keynote was how making a higher level of performance accessible to as many people as possible is crucial for New Zealand's environmental, economic, and social future. So it's getting like a little bit nerdy, like the nerd has been unleashed. But one of the topics I spoke about in that was resilience. And I feel that a lot of the people who perhaps cling to some of these labels find a level of comfort or alleviation to their anxieties or uncertainties about where they fit into the world.
Yep.
And so mental health or having mental health issues might be a label that some people, and I don't say this lightly because mental health issues are so, so very, very real. But like anything, I think there are a lot of people out there who will agree that, that label has become a little bit of a crutch and a source of comfort for some people. That's kind of the only rationale I can think behind it. But the other part of me also says, okay, I think we need to listen to someone if they say I've got mental health issues or I've experienced trauma, 100%. So what is missing? What's the missing puzzle piece? What is missing from their resilience toolkit that means that they're sitting in that kind of murky territory? And that's something that I've been thinking a lot about over the last 9 or 10 months. What can I do to help foster that in the next generation? And I talk about it very openly, as you know.
Yeah, it is such a unique one. I went through my turmoils, and I've spoken a lot about publicly, and I see it the same. I've got young kids, young teens, and I see them growing up, and the anxiety on it. The anxiety on our kids, or on kids generally. I'm like, on what? Why? But that's me judging, right? And don't throw shit at the camera if you're watching the TV. Don't judge me. But I'm saying it's a different generational thing, and it was we just had to accept it. And now the challenge is because we're older, we don't know how to handle it.
Yeah.
So is it that we now allow them to do that when they're teens so they get the right tool set? And it's a bit of that gray area, because this is the first generational shift between one generation to the another. We are a full pivot shift.
Yeah.
The man's man was 1920s, 40s, 60s, 80s. Yeah. Somewhere in the 80s, there was a whole lot of partying scene and long hair and shit. And then it slowly started transitioning. But now we get into the generational push where it's a full swing, right?
Yeah.
Everything's open. You can be what you want to be, whether you believe, see it. You can identify as anything, you can believe in anything. And now it's sort of a challenge between societal norms to new norms and see how it fits in. And
the conflict between those, right? Yeah. And one of the ways that I like to look at it, and especially if I'm in a business context, if I'm trying to explain this to perhaps an older manager or leader, is that, let's just use the Gen Z label because that easily classifies a specific group of young people, right? It's not Gen Z's fault that they were born at a time where their life is fundamentally easier. Yeah. And so we can't keep giving them shit for it. And if people say that they're lazy or they're disengaged or they're distracted by this, they're anxious, whatever, cool, you can say that. But you can also be those things at any age. You can be a dickhead at 50. You can be lazy and disengaged at 60, 40, 30. It doesn't matter. And I think that phrase about Gen Z being born at a time where life is fundamentally easier is what we need to look at. And it's, if we're at, I use a scale of like 0 to 10 or 0 to 20. And if we have, us, our like baseline level of difficulty might be a 10.
Yeah.
And Gen Z there might be at 2 because they've got speed, connectivity, convenience, ease, access to information. They've got all of these things that theoretically make their life easier. But because of that, their baseline level of difficulty in life is a 2, whereas we're at a 10. And we grew up at a 10 or an 11. So when something happens at an 8, we're like,
easy.
Or when something happens at an 8 for them, they're like, fuck.
Yeah.
How do I handle this? And that's not their fault.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the world has been going for that much longer.
Yeah. And that's the sort of stuff that I'm hoping over the sort of next couple of years. And we've seen it with New Zealand now that there's companies realizing that, mental health is big in the workforce. The benefits of the back of COVID is the remote working, more time, space, and understanding. So we've seen those sort of benefits as well. And one more thing around this before I want to go on to the last point is I think we have to call out the other generations, but also having a full understanding of our previous generation, right? So there's always this famous saying that when I was a kid, it was always better. When I was a kid, the pedestal I stood on was better than your pedestal, right? And we always believe that, and then we force that down and not have a realization. Coming back into sort of a business world, I was reading an article a couple of months ago about a company in America that was struggling to engage with their Gen Z workforce at the entry-level positions because they never read emails. Okay. And then the company was like, well, you're supposed to read your emails. And then there was a realization that, hold on, if they transition the communication into a different form through a WhatsApp mechanism or whichever other format of communication, the engagement would go through because it was this also understanding. So I think a big thing around that is yes, we need to build our safe spaces, but also we've got to respect this weird transition period that we're in at the moment. And, I grew up in Africa. I grew up in South Africa, hard, staunch. My old man is a military man, pushing it down the rules. I come here and it's totally the opposite. So I still have internal turmoils on myself with my daughter and my son growing up and going, no, there shouldn't be that fluffiness in there. Get rid of that fluffiness.
Yeah.
And I think that's where, as sort of some of the generations, as us as individuals can go, cool, we would at least understand or allow that for them to take it in. It might just build a better space overall for the society within New Zealand.
For everyone. And isn't that such a fundamental cause of so many issues as well? The lack of understanding of others.
Yeah.
And I think in order to do that, one has to cultivate a sense of self-awareness within themselves. Like you have to be self-aware to be able to be aware of others.
And 100% true. And the worst of all, most of us only become self-aware when life has said, fuck you.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
When life has thrown you something or given you something that's literally going to cripple you to your knees, only then to become self-aware. Yeah. And one of the biggest things when I talk to people and I go to do speaking events is I'm like, why wait for the curveball?
Yeah.
Why wait for that moment when you literally hit rock bottom in wherever you are and then do a self-aware and go, I understand. Now I have that realization. We all can get there and we can all understand that right now. And I think that's something to leave our audience with. And from this point is just, why wait to that end? Try and get to it in the moment.
Yeah. Everything that you've got within you is there for a reason.
Yeah. Cool. I want to go into the last point. I know this could be another very Kiwi, New Zealand, Australian point, and it's a real one. I know we've spoken about this previously, but the whole tall poppy side.
I knew that's what this point was going to be. Australia, New Zealand, tall poppy syndrome.
Yeah. So I want to come on it. So just a bit of a backstory to the audience. You've had great success through your journey, through a young age, ticked a whole lot of boxes. Everything else, you've conquered the world per se, right? Not to that. But when you've been asked the question of, would you do it again in New Zealand with the impact of what tall poppy has affected you and your style, you've pretty much turned around and said, no, you wouldn't.
If I knew what I knew now when I was 18, I would have left. It's such a destructive environment for anyone who tries to do anything different. And I'd really like to quote this amazing person, Jay Galdard, and he has set up an initiative called Etu Tangata, which was well underway when the article that came up in the New Zealand Herald, which kind of spurred this whole Lani Fogelberg talks about tall poppy thing, happened. And it's like trying hard is not cool. And what he said was just like, I thought it was so good. When I had a conversation with him recently was that, okay, if you've got a pilot who's flying your plane, or if you've got a surgeon that's operating on you, like, do you want them to try hard? Do you want them to have like tried hard at med school or at, aviation school? Like, yeah, because you want that plane to fly, like, and you want to wake up and heal from that surgery. So why is it that when it comes to so many disciplines and so many other things or things that are perceived as non-mainstream, why is it not cool to try hard and do well? It's like, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense to me at all. And I haven't really landed on, systemically what causes this tall poppy syndrome. And I think I could think about it for the rest of my life and probably still not work it out. But given that I have a little bit of a platform, and particularly the conversation that media exposure last year created, I feel like I'm in a really good position to be able to break myths about success. And so that's what, and you've seen this, of course, but this is what I really try to get across and communicate online in my content. Like, I'm a human. We're all human. We're all fundamentally different. We've all been born into different families, born into different countries, even, you and I born into different countries, and we've had different experiences and made different decisions. And regardless of how those decisions have been made or what led us to have certain experiences, where those decisions and experiences land us is not bad. Like, if you end up achieving a level of success, why is that a bad thing? It just doesn't make sense to me.
It's so true. I've got, so everyone knows a bit of my backstory with 2019 with my brain surgery. Off the back of that, I had my insurance didn't pay out. I was almost financially broke, almost divorced my wife, lost almost everything. January 2020 was my moment of where, try and fight out, or suicide was the two doors. And, I've gone through a whole lot since then and built, and I've achieved something in the last year. I'm just about to move into my dream home that me and my wife have been waiting 7 or 8 years and been building 2 years to get to it. And I'm kept getting pushed by my an amazing guy called Andrew Armstrong, my mortgage broker, a very good friend, also one of the people that got me out of this. And he's like, Lawrence, you got to talk about this more publicly. You got to put it out there. And the challenge that I have is that exact thing going, if I put it out there, I'm going to have everyone online is going to go, look, everyone online is going to go, look at this arsehole showing the nice house that he has. And he's like, but no, you should be able to go out and go, hey, look what I went through and recovered and be able to work and still being able to get to what I've dreamt that I want for me and my family. And that's the hardest challenge as a person, because not doing it because I want to say my success is better than your success, but just going, look, I've achieved something. I'm proud of what I've achieved. But I'll show I go, dude, I can't do that. I can't go and show that online. I'll get fucking stabbed and people will throw shit at me and like get online, and it's so horrible.
And it's like, there was some commentary after that article, and strategically the Herald used a photo of me next to one of my cars, like cool man.
Let's just mention what car so people understand that.
It was a red car made in Italy. If it was a Ferrari, but which I've had for 6 years, like old news, right? But anyway, they chose that photo, and so much of the commentary is, stop complaining. You've got a Ferrari. You got the reason people hate on you is because you brag about it. And it's like, okay, first of all, I didn't write this article. I'm not a journalist. A journalist phoned me, spoke to me, and then wrote it. So there's that. But also, when we talk about something like tall poppy syndrome, whether it's myself, whether it's anyone else that talks about this issue, it's not about us. Like, the people that are talking about it don't give a fuck what trolls are saying at 2 a.m. on the internet, right? Like, we've got better things to do with our time. And if they want to spend their time doing that, that's fine. When we're talking about it, it's because it's a fucking problem. Not for ourselves, but for the generation that's coming up. And I had about 3,000 messages after that article across different platforms. And the hardest ones to read were the ones from parents who said, I've got a 17-year-old daughter and she wanted to go and do XYZ, but she didn't because da-da-da said this.
Yeah.
And that is heartbreaking when you've got kids. 17-year-old is a kid. When you've got kids, they want to go and do something and they don't pursue it because of tall poppy syndrome. And, you know, they've climbed to the top of whatever it is. They've gotten into some kind of program. They didn't accept the place.
Yeah.
Those were the most heartbreaking messages to read. And then secondly, on the topic of like your house, right? So, and even if you share, like say you're moved in, people know that you've built your house and there's a photo of your beautiful, nice, new, shiny kitchen and someone attacks you for that. And it's like, you're not showing off your beautiful, shiny kitchen. You're just in your kitchen and this happens to be your kitchen, right? And it's the same kind of thing. Like if I'm driving my Ferrari and a group of guys comes up to me and asks me how many dicks I had to suck to pay for it. Like, I think it's quite reasonable to have the expectation for that to not happen. Like, I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation to like be able to drive the car that I choose to drive in like fucking peace. But also if I share a photo of it online, it's like, I'm not showing off. It's like I'm driving, or it's like, this is just part of my life.
Yeah.
And it's the same for anyone that shares things that they've achieved online. Like, yes, they're proud, but also this is just what they've been up to for the last 6 months. And so people have this complete disconnect, I think, between the intention that people have when it comes to like sharing what they're doing online and what they perceive of that. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it totally does. You know, in the beginning, for me, a good few years ago, it took me a bit of time myself to take, you know, I got started getting a bit of negative feedback. Not negative feedback, just trolls going online. And in the beginning, you take it a bit personally. No, I don't give a fuck.
Yeah.
But sometimes I just laugh. I had someone call me out for stealing the money in South Africa during apartheid and I need to go back to Africa. I laughed so hard on that one. It made me laugh.
Creativity.
I know. I was like,
what's your favorite?
I was like, that was pretty good. But it's like, that was pretty good. But then I sent that message to I sent that message to a group of friends of mine and went, where the fuck got the money? Where's the money at? Because where's this money this guy said I stole? So for a few days but yes, look, you know, the teenagers, they picked on the 20-year-olds and that sort of stuff, you know, so I started, you know, when I talk to people, and it's hard because within my kids, I can install hey, don't give a fuck what someone else says. Don't let it hit you. Don't let it hurt you. You can come home and talk to me and we can have a safe space, but we can't do that with everyone.
Yeah.
And I don't know with the tall poppy thing, because it's been around for quite some time, I don't want to say it's built off the whole Instagram world of look what I have, because that is newer than how long tall poppy's been around, right? So there's not that correlation because if it was, you could have gone, cool, it's that Instagram, it's the vibe, it's the look at me, I've rented a car, I've rented a plane when it's all fake. But that isn't it. It's been there from before that. Yeah. And I don't know if it's just we live in a small country. We don't want people to leave, you know, the old style of the crabs out the bucket, how they understand it in America. We don't want people to jump ship and go other places because we can't do that.
Yeah.
And also, again, this is something we never saw in South Africa. And I don't know if it's to play because we're in a country that is so small that let's exclude 2023, sort of end of 2022 and 2023 from a political and violence and problems. Let's cut that out of it.
Yeah.
We have very little first world problems and we have very little third world problems. Now, don't again shout at me and say, "Hey, there's cost of living and housing and all that shit."
Through the screen,
that stuff's standard. But my friends always joke when I see them. They're like, "Hey, can you pull up your Herald or stuff and show me what's on the front page of your news?" And they laugh their ass off because some woman has lost, the family sheep has gone missing for 3 weeks. Is on the front page of the stuff, right? And we've seen these things. So I'm wondering is because we have so little of these major things, we go and jump on other things that we shouldn't, and now we've held on and we're gripping these, and it's like the tall poppies now become a thing that we're gripping on, and the mental health is this thing we're gripping on because we don't have to worry like growing up in South Africa, the violence down the road and the death and the murder and the poverty. So we that's where our focus is in, so we can leave this stuff alone. And I'm wondering if that's because of where our energy is sitting.
Oh, and honestly, with some of the stuff that's wound up in the media about me, I'm like, So like, why?
Yeah.
Someone wrote an opinion piece after that tall poppy syndrome. It was like a middle-aged bloke who didn't know me from a bar of soap. And the article was something like, don't buy a Ferrari without reading this first. And it was like, the whole thing was just an opinion piece speculating why I bought a Ferrari. And it's like, dude, you could have like picked up the phone and like asked me and wrote like a cool profile piece. Or you could have spoken to your colleagues who wrote an article about the story of my cars 3 months before. And when you've got that kind of stuff taking up headlines, like, and we're wondering why we've got a mental health issue when, here's an article which is just shitting on someone with like a load of codswallop of like made up fabricated stuff. Like we're fed negative information every day through our most prolific information sources.
And that's maybe where where it could be fed from, so not necessarily the Instagram world, but the social media world and the online world, because
mainstream.
Yeah, the stuff sells, right?
Advertising.
The advertising sells, the marketing sells, the BuzzFeed, right? BuzzFeed doesn't sell. There's no good article on BuzzFeed.
BuzzFeed is the reason that Oh Hey is on the number plate of the Ferrari.
Why is that?
It was like this video went around 10 years ago, I'm going to say, probably like 2014. And it was if women catcalled men. And it was just women being like, whoop boy, what you got under that shirt, sweetie? Bet it's a good heart. And then it was, but the beginning of the video opened up with these chicks talking, and one of them was like, oh, hey. So when I was buying the Ferrari, I was like, on the number plates website, like, oh, what number plate should I put on it? And I was like, oh, hey. And it's like, this combination is available. I'm like, no. As it had to be done.
Oh,
good old BuzzFeed.
That's brilliant.
Lighten the tone for a second.
I think, look at that. I think, if you're thinking back of it, I think that's a lot more to it that's fed into ourselves, because that's what sells. And therefore, that what sells is I need to find an opinion piece, and to find an opinion piece, I need to knock someone. And that's been fed to us so long that our culture has grown up seeing that is the way, right? And seeing the way that you're doing better than me. And if I want to be on the front page of the Herald, I'm going to turn around and go, you shit.
Yeah.
And you don't know what you're talking about. That'll get me on the Herald, not you on the Herald.
Best thing on being the front page of the Herald, they used a photo of my 2020 lockdown regrowth. I was like, oh, come on. This is just cruel, guys. Some file photo they had from like 3 years ago. But the one thing that I always encourage people to do is like, go and live in the fucking real world.
Yeah.
Like we spend so much time online in the course of our day to day, especially with our jobs. And like it's when we're actually able to take the time to connect with ourselves and understand like what's in here, what do we actually want, that we're able to build kind of that fortitude and that conviction within ourselves of what we're doing.
Yeah.
It's kind of what I encourage young people to do, right? It's like get away from what's online and actually sit with yourself and think about like everything that honestly, I'm just such a big believer that everything you need is already within you. It like tells you what you're passionate about. It tells you what you want. Tells you what you need to do. But I think we have so much noise that it becomes very difficult to do that.
Yeah, finding oneself usually happens in the moment of silence, but that silence is very hard to find.
So hard to find.
Right. And whether it's a moment, silence doesn't have to be in a room quiet. This is where people misunderstand it. Silence is in a place where you with oneself and in a happy place. Yeah. So for example, I've just been talking to a few people. There's a new Tony Robbins Unleash the Power Within in Sydney in September, coming up in a few months' time. I crewed there 4 years ago. The most chaotic 6 days of my life. I slept 20 hours in 6 days, but to me, it was one of the most calmest moments in my life ever. So I'm seeking that, because that, to anyone else, they would go, why? 16 hours a day on your feet, get maybe 2-3 hours sleep. But to me, that was my silent moment. And that's the sort of stuff I think also trying to realize as we grow and see is learning what is the moment that you can sit down and go, okay, now I feel, now I understand, and then seek that more, or ask someone to help you seek towards that and then build up from that. And then you can work through it, because again, I'll call out anyone online, anyone that wants to go out there and says, I talk a whole lot of shit. I'll say straight to face, fuck you. But fundamentally, we are both here on our path, however different it is, trying to make a difference in our field, but also fundamentally trying to help the previous generation.
Yeah.
And that's something that makes me sick and tired of people missing that, is fundamentally going, these guys are doing all these cool things and seeing and being online, but not realizing the hard work we're putting in to help the previous generation, to help them through their challenges from the knowledges that we have and the niches that we can assist in as well.
Oh, and that's the thing. Like, I'm at a point in my life and have been for a very, very long time where I'm so, what's the right word? I mean, fulfilled is probably the right word, right? And that comes down to a few different things. It doesn't purely come down to what my profession's been for the last 10, 15 years. Part of it comes down to some of the formative experiences that I had when I was very young. My cousin's partner was killed in a train crash when I was 10. I witnessed a fatal accident when I was 14. Having those kinds of experiences at that age leaves such an impression on you that you know that regardless of what happens, as I'm sure you have felt since your surgery, whatever happens, like, man, I've got this. Like, I'm going to be okay. Like, I'm fine. And having that perspective, I feel, is so powerful, but I do feel that it's quite hard to cultivate. And as you say, when you don't have that silence, and I feel like I'm in such a position to have a genuine impact. And I know that I do from the messages that I receive, and it might be only on a handful of people, right? But if you're helping someone find some direction or know what the next step is to take to make themselves feel better about the life that they're living, and to help them ultimately get into a position where they feel more fulfilled and happier, and that they feel more successful, right? Because success is a feeling. Then, man, like, I'm done. Like, that's me. Like, that's what I live for.
That's amazing. As we come to the end of the show, Lani, is there anything to our audience? I know there's so much more we can go into that, and if they want to learn more and find out more on that, by all means, we'll leave it to them to find ourselves and to go further down that. But is there anything you want to leave our audience with today? Just a last thought or insight?
I think I've got to use that line, right? Yeah. Everything that you need is within you already. Like, especially the young ones. Everything that you need is in, like, you're good enough and like you're a valuable individual. Everything you need is right here.
Amazing. Awesome. Where can anyone find you?
I'm online everywhere and so easily stalkable because of my amazing, unique name that also puts my emails into people's junk folders. I'm Lani Fogelberg on all social platforms. So you'll find a link to my podcast if you search Lani Fogelberg on any podcast platform. But I'm super active on Insta, and if anyone wants to get in touch with me, they can DM me on Instagram or LinkedIn.
Slide right in. Awesome. Thanks so much for Lani. And to everyone else, again, thanks for coming over. Whether you listen on the audio podcast or the video version of the podcast today, as always, I say at the end of the show, if there's something, I don't care about telling you to like and subscribe and all the rest of the other stuff. What I care about is there's something that resonates in this message for you to take it and learn and listen back and take it for yourself and seeing what you can learn from it. And also considering other people out there. Think about your friends, your family, your coworkers that might have picked up something from this, struggling from the mental health side, having issues around tall poppy, just trying to find themselves within their world and their society as they are today. And maybe they are the people that need it. And you can say, hey, come on over. Here's something that you can pick up from that. And that's all that we're trying to do, is just improve the world that we live in today, improve society, because fundamentally there's more wealth in this world than all of us need. And we can all be happy, we can all achieve it, and we all can get there and just enjoy our lives to the fullest every single day. But as always, stay beautiful, stay powerful, and I hope to see you next time.